Greetings, everyone. Welcome to the LiftAffect podcast. I am your host, Matt McNeil, founder, clinical director, and director of human performance at LiftAffect, where we assist professional pilots with maintaining better mental health and optimizing their mental skills. The goal of this podcast is simple: to help pilots and other high liability professionals and disciplines come out of the shadows to discover how we can live better lives personally and professionally. Join us each episode as we discuss various topics ranging from mental health, mental skills and performance, to business, entrepreneurship, and a few other surprises along the way.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of the LiftAffect podcast, where I'm your host, Karl Keller, along with the man that's always zenning and in the zone, my partner and main man, Matt McNeil. Dude.
What's going on?
How you doing?
In the zone, man. Yeah, right.
Yeah. Well, that's what I said, zen zone, you know.
Yeah, zen, something like that.
Yeah.
I got projects going on. I got the electrician is rewiring something. I got the fence guys putting in new pieces of fence. So sorry for the pounding if you hear it in the background. But other than that, things are good. What's going on?
Awesome.
How you doing?
Just in a hectic week, but other than that, I mean, it's just it's that age-old thing, you sit there and go, God, things are so boring. I wish something would happen. Versus God, things are so chaotic. I'd love to be bored. I'd say right now I'm on I wish I was bored.
Yeah. Boredom is creativity, That's why I hate it when I hear like kids, like it seems like their catchphrase is I'm bored. I'm bored.
I'm so bored.
I'm so bored.
I have nothing to do.
And it's like, boredom is actually good.
Yeah.
But they're so used to having a device in their face that they can't, they can't stand
it's that
anything.
Stimulation, external stimulation, the requirement for it, instead of having that creative, opportunity. It's like when you're young, and it's like every summer there's spring break and summer break, and then later on you go, where'd that all go?
Yeah. It's really awful.
Yeah.
Really
It's just, as you get older, sometimes you don't, I can't say sometimes, when you're young, you don't realize how valuable that quiet time, I don't want to call it dead space or boredom, but it's just the quiet time, reflective and everything like that.
TTT, man. Time to think.
And I would say 4 T's. Take time to think.
Take time to think. Yeah. You got to schedule it, though. What gets scheduled gets done. What does not get scheduled gets done by chance. And
so, along those lines, as far as getting in, taking that time and being able to be creative or focused, we were saying before in the pre-show, what were we going to talk about today? And, it's something that has been brought up many times before, and we haven't really delved into it. And this is a good place to talk about getting into the zone, getting focused, getting dialed in. And, this would be a good thing to riff on today. What do you think?
Why not? Let's talk about it. I've gotten quite a few questions about zones, like what is the zone, or they call them flow moments. There's all the flow research, but I think we know what just getting in the zone means. Certainly in the flight environment, I think there's times where we feel like we're in the zone, or in the training environment, or whatever. I have to get in my own zones. I got to do a lot of talks, and so I've got to get into either I'm in the zone and I am able to deliver well, or I'm not in the zone and I don't deliver well. So you can find zones in all aspects of your life. A zone could even be meeting with your boss, or a business meeting, or a prospect, or a meeting with a patient for our medical listeners. But the zone just means, I think, when your functioning is optimized, as I define it. But there's a way. So what's the question that we should address? How do you get in the zone? Or
well, I think it could be.
How do you find it?
I think it could be a combination of all those things. But I'm going to kind of throw something to ask a question with that, and that is,
okay,
a lot of people that are in the zone are very focused, and it's almost like leave him alone. He's in the zone.
Yeah.
He's got it.
Yeah.
One of the things I would always say, what would you call the difference between being in the zone and being fixated? To me, those are, because somebody that's fixated is also very intently, on something, and are they in the zone and just a bad zone? Or would you think fixated is something different than someone who's in an optimal efficiency working on something?
It's a good question. I think I understand it, because it's kind of a complicated question. But I think when I think about a zone, I think there's like three aspects of zone. There's a cognitive aspect, which is what are you thinking about? And some of that we can break that. Let's go down a rabbit hole on this in a second. But so there's the cognitive piece, the thoughts. There's the emotional piece, which is like, what are the emotions that you're experiencing? And then there's the physiology or the physiological piece, which is what is happening energetically in your body. So you've got thinking, you've got emotions, and you've got physiology. That's the makeup of zone. Yeah. And so maybe there's times where your mind might be fixating, your cognitive piece could be fixating, where that's appropriate, and maybe there's times where it's not appropriate. So it just depends. And then emotionally, it's up and down. And then there's the physiology of, like, sometimes we shake when we're really in the zone, and that doesn't always mean a bad thing. Like, some people want to avoid, they're like, don't avoid, you got to avoid shaking. That's a problem. No, shaking is to keep your body. It's to excite your body so you can react quickly. So there's times where you want to use the innate mastery of your physiology. That it's what we're wired up to be able to perform. So it's not always a bad thing. But, like, here's one thing we could do. If go ahead, what are you gonna say?
All I was gonna do is help maybe define, because you just used the word fixate. To me, when I think of fixate, it's something where you're just so intent on one thing to the exclusion of all else.
You're blocking other things out. Yeah.
So use fixate. And I just want to make sure that maybe I'm looking at it in a different light, where they're you can't even get them. They're just, it's like almost a bad. Well, to me, it's a bad thing when you fixate on something.
But sometimes you need to fix it. You need to be able to block everything else out so that you can actually identify, like, for example, where the threat might be, or where your attention needs to go. Right? If you're distracted with everything else, that could be a problem. So fixation is not a good thing or a bad thing. It depends. It depends on the context. But what we could do is, in terms of, like, zone, if I could, you want to be a guinea pig? You want to be the guinea pig?
I'm not.
Okay, you are the guinea pig.
Oh my God, you've just,
the big guy is he's the guinea pig today. Okay, so
the big guinea pig.
So he's the guinea pig, or I'll use myself. I don't care.
No, it's fine. I'm good.
Okay. All right, so
I'm good.
So, like, what could be an activity where you can reflect on, of when you're really, like, in a zone? Is it with the fire department? Is it with flying? Is it with, it could be anything, business, but just choose something that you can reflect on of when you're in a zone, and then we'll break it down. We'll look at the pieces that go into that for you. What's a good situation that we could use?
I would say, as far as, I'm going to try and take it back to what people would know versus what I'm doing right now.
Mm-hmm.
You're in the weather, and you're shooting an approach, but you're having to hand fly it.
Okay.
And you're flying an ILS, so you're focusing.
So you're not coupled
on your cross check. You're bringing it down to minimums.
Okay.
But you're focusing on making sure that you're on course, on glide path.
Okay.
So to me, that's a very focused intensive where you've got to keep that cross check constantly going.
Okay, so now there's a couple things we could do to break this down. There's one thing you could do would be an analysis of physiological expression. We can't do that, right? Because we don't have the tools to do that. So you could do like a logistic regression analysis with biometrics to then be able to determine outcomes. That's with this high level stuff. But another thing you could do is just look at when are you in a zone moment and when you're in a no zone moment. So what I would want to think about in that situation of you hand flying an approach in weather down to minimums, is first thing I want to look at is where are your thoughts? Then I want to look at where's your energy level? And then we're going to compare, contrast similarities and differences and how we can backwards plan your performance routine to account for the differences between your zone, no zone moments. So the first thing I would say is, okay, well, let's look at the task. We're going to work backwards. So what is the task requirement for you as the human in that situation of hand flying down to minimums? What is required of you to really be able to do that optimally? What's your thoughts on that? What do you need to bring to the table to be able to make that happen? And I'm going to write these down on the whiteboard here.
Now, are we talking about as far as what I think I need system-wise as far as? Or
no, as far as you are concerned. Like, so, for example, like when I'm doing a speaking engagement, I'm just thinking that because I just spoke this week and I've got an upcoming talk, big talk coming up. I've got to be able to bring energy. I've got to bring engagement with the audience. I've got to be able to bring strategy. I've got to be able to prepare. I've got to be able to think about my technical requirements of what I need to make this thing happen. That's the task requirement for me to be in the zone for speaking. So for you in the zone of flying this approach, what are the requirements? What do you got to bring for you?
To me, in my mind, I got to make sure that I have a good understanding of the approach that I'm flying. If there's anything unique or different that I have to take into account.
So environmental understanding, right, or aspects?
I would say that.
The procedural?
Definitely procedural.
Okay. I'm making notes here.
Make sure that, is there any equipment issues on my aircraft?
Yes.
That are going to impact that decision. And often there already is because I'm hand flying.
Yes.
What are the aspects that I need to take into account if I either get off course, off glide slope, or hit the point where I need to make a decision on what am I going to do if I can't execute a proper landing. Right. So I have to, again, make sure that I'm already prepared, that I don't get into this mindset, I'm going to make this work no matter what.
Right.
That there are limits, and when you hit that missed approach point, you execute, and you don't try to sit there and go, oh, one potato, two potato, five.
You need technical understanding.
Yeah. Discipline is what I would say also. Just the fact is that the procedures are there for a purpose. Follow them.
Yep. What about you, physiology, or like just in terms of your not physiology yet, because we'll get to that, but like, do you have to bring some kind of energy, alertness? Well, task requirement for you.
You want to make sure that you're not. Usually, during those key moments, you're very rarely are you going to be like drowsy or have any worry about your ability to not focus on something. So, I definitely feel like that you should have that. But to me, that's almost a given. Yep. I hate to say it like that, but that's just something that you already know that this is not something that is that you can just let the autopilot do its thing in your monitoring. You have to actively engage in making what I would say very delicate and finite changes.
Okay, so let's do this. So let me reel you in. So in terms of the task requirement, if you had three things that that's required of you, the human being, it sounds like it is technical understanding, right? Technical understanding. It is, you need the equipment, I would say the technical requirements, external requirements have to be there. The equipment's got to be working, right? So technical understanding, technical requirements. And what else? What about energetically for you? You got to be engaged? Highly engaged.
Yeah, I mean, this is something where you're, like I say, you're not in a monitoring role. You're
right. So you're actively engaged.
You're actively and proactively engaged.
Okay, actively, proactively engaged. All right. So you need technical requirements. You need a technological technical understanding, and you need active, proactive engagement on yourself. That's the task requirements. Okay. So then let's think about physiologically. So if you need to have a certain level of energy, 1 to 10, where do you need it to be? 10 is like 10 is like somebody walked in with a grenade. Okay, that's like me when I'm thinking of talking. That's like me with like 18 cups of coffee. Like probably not a good thing, right? To be that, like engaged, but and 1 is asleep. Where do you need to be physiologically on a scale of 1 to 10?
My answer would be I would need to be at about an 8.
Okay,
because that still gives me room if something happens. Because if I feel like if I'm at a 10, I'm maxed out.
You're twitchy, right?
Yeah. Yeah, you want to be very, very alert, but still have the ability to, if something else happens, that you can react and still address the issue. Okay,
so you're at an 8. So now give me 3 things that you feel in your body when you're at an 8. How does that feel physiologically? Just descriptors. It could be anything you want.
It'd be weird. I feel...
Yeah, go for it.
My hands.
Hands, okay.
My feet.
Okay.
And my breathing.
And breath. Okay.
Those are things that I'm always, it seems kind of weird you would think about those things, but those are things I'm always
how do they feel though? Like, so your hands, feet, and your breath, but how do those feel? Are they light? Are they fast? Are they relaxed? Are they,
unclenched or in other words, where they're, like you say, relaxed. They're
relaxed. Okay.
Like, so that when I'm holding the yoke, I'm almost caressing it.
Light.
In a way, I'm not clenched and
light.
Very light. And I'm
so relaxed, light, and responsive. Calm. Well, light is calm, right? Or relaxed is calm.
No, yeah, I guess you could say that. But yeah, they're. I don't know if I want to call responsive, because to me that is part of being responsive.
Don't overthink it. Just how does it feel in your body? So relaxed, it feels light. Give me one more. Is it deep? You said breath.
Yeah, as far as that's where I went to calm, where I'm not hyper, like I'm breathing heavily or fast. I'm just.
Let's say calm breathing.
Yep.
Okay.
That's why I kept coming back to calm.
Okay, so that's the physiological response. Now, the emotions. What are the emotions? Give me 3 emotional ingredients that when you get on the approach, hand flying in weather, it's like, okay, 1, 2, 3, check. I'm there emotionally. I'm there. No more than 3. So what is that? So examples could be like present. It could be juiced. It could be, whatever you want to do, right?
I would say analytical.
Okay.
In other words, where I'm analyzing all the things, absorbing, and I don't know how to use that word other than the fact is I'm taking all the input that a lot of it's audio also. Listening to this is an example. So I'm taking that in.
Absorbed. Yeah.
And
give me one more emotion. Are you excited?
No.
Are you anticipating? Is there a continuation kind of feeling? or is it detached? I always made myself very detached, so I would know, so I could go mist.
I want to say that it was where I wasn't, because I couldn't figure the right word, where I wasn't invested in making it happen at all costs. Like you say, where you're standing away and going, you know what, I want to be able to land, but sometimes that's out of my control. If the weather goes below minimums, that's not something that I caused. So I don't want to sit there and make it happen.
For me, I used to get myself excited to go mist. I know it sounds weird, but I'm like, I'm excited to go mist. This is going to be great. I hope we get to go mist, so that I wouldn't be like, oh, we got to push it. But for you, so analytical, you're absorbing the information, and what's other thing? Is it resign? Is it?
It goes to what you were kind of saying, but it's like I'm mentally going over the mist procedure, because it's not something that we do often, except in the Sims. So in my mind, I'm actually reviewing all the steps, like literally going, okay, I'm gonna, toga. I'm actually going through all the steps in my mind.
Right.
So emotionally, it's reviewing the steps so that it's not
so like from an emotional standpoint, though. What do you feel from an emotional standpoint?
Prepared. I would call that is where I'm at peace.
Prepared. Okay.
If that, like I said, I know that's not a great word to use.
Let's go for it. We'll do it. Let's use it. Okay, so that's
right now. The audience is going like, "Wow, I'm not sure I'm getting in the airplane with that boy."
Yeah, no. But this is how we find the zone of optimal functioning. So physiology is relaxed, light, calm breathing. The emotions are analytical, absorbed, and prepared. And what are the thoughts now? Think about the self-talk aspect. Where does your brain need to be? You can do it from self-talk or where your brain needs to be. You can do it from either place. But give me 3 descriptors that you feel when you're in that situation, in that zone. And I can give you some for me if you want, but
I'm trying not to get fixated. And what I mean by fixated, focus purely on airspeed.
Don't fixate. Yeah.
Yeah, because it's easy to do. The airspeed starts to get out of hand, and then you're dropping everything else out of your cross check. That to me has always been the big one.
Don't fixate. That's one thought. Give me 2 more.
To maintain that state of relaxation where you're not tensed up and
stay relaxed. And I would argue, based on the task requirements, and I think, I'm not trying to give you the answer, but I would imagine, if I was analyzing you, is that it would be know the plan. Like the cognitive thing is like, that's always like, okay, we're going to go mist. This is what it's going to, here's the call outs, straight ahead up to 5,000, left turn, or it's coupled, or, whatever, however you want to do it. I guess you're hand flying, so it's not coupled. But I would imagine it's probably know the plan.
Yeah, and that's why I said earlier, know what I'm going to do if everything goes well, and know what I'm going to do, and actually rehearse it in my mind if I don't. It's just like on takeoff, for prepare for a V1 and a V2.
Yep.
Type cuts.
So, okay. So this is good. We've got the task requirements, which are, I wrote something down. I can't read my frickin' handwriting, which pisses me off. You have technical,
you said environmental,
technical requirements, the activity or proactively engaged, right? The physiology, you've got relaxed, light, calm breathing. Emotions, it's analytical, absorbed, and prepared. And thoughts, it's don't fixate, stay relaxed, know the plan. That sound about right? Right?
For the most part, yeah.
That's pretty much where you're at, right? So you can see this works. That is where you are in your optimal zone when you're at an 8. So from this point, what we really have is the task requirement, and then what I would do to make sure that, or what Karl would do to make sure he brings in an 8. so that he can fulfill the task requirements. Because sometimes people think they know what they want to be, especially if they haven't really given it much thought. And then you want to make sure that the task required and their physiological requirements are compatible. So that's what we're looking for in this, in finding a zone of optimized functioning, is make sure that the task required and the physiological requirements, there's compatibility, because sometimes there's not. And so you got to look out for that. So what we'll start to do here is ask the questions, right? So can these requirements produce this outcome if these were in check? And so you review these things: thought, emotions, physiology, task requirements. We just did that. So for your brain to be able to actually do the task and then have what I think of as the energy, engagement, the strategy, is a 8 out of 10 where you need to be optimally? Or is it higher, or is it lower? Because sometimes when you do this, you're like, I probably don't need to be at an 8. I probably need to be at a 6 to be optimized, because sometimes if I'm too amped, right, it might actually get in the way. If I'm too relaxed, I'm too disengaged. So you want to compare. Does that make sense?
I would give you an example where I would be at a 6.
Okay.
And that would be on a visual approach during the day.
Uh-huh.
And I'm basically flying as if I'm doing in the weather, but it's not. And so I already know that I don't have all of the same environmental concerns. Mm-hmm. The outcome is assured to a much higher degree. And I was thinking about it, because I never thought of myself being, from 0 to 10. The reason I would say an 8 is, to me, if I have to go missed approach, it's something I've mentally rehearsed, but it's still something I wasn't planning on doing. Then I would I would up my game a little bit more to, like, say, an 8.5 or a 9. And the 10 would be, is during that missed approach, now I have something else happens, an engine fire, so that there's still that room for growth, but I'm elevated because it's already things that we're not normally doing. We're not normally doing a hand flying to minimums approach in the weather. So to me, I can't give a reason why I would be at a 6. Even if somebody had 20,000 hours, they may be more comfortable and relaxed, but they have to be mentally at that higher level. Then, to me, a 6 is, on that kind of scale, would be a low.
Yeah. So okay, but for the original task requirement of hand flying in weather, mm-hmm. does the 8, knowing that you've got to be there's technical requirements, there's technological requirements, there's engaged requirements from a task perspective. You've got to be relaxed, light, have calm breathing. You've got to be analytical, absorbed, and prepared. And you can't fixate. You've got to stay relaxed, and you have to know the plan. Does the 8 feel correct?
I think it does.
Yeah. Okay, great. So that's great. So what we need, and again, we just want to make sure that what you think your task requirements are to fulfill the task, that those kind of match up, that they marry up, right? So and once we have this, then what we would do, which we're not going to do today, because this is where coaching takes several sessions to do this correctly. And Karl is very self-aware. He's done this a lot. He knows, this is somebody that's got a lot of experience. He's probably thought through some of this, but so it takes a long time. And this is, we did this in 15 minutes. Normally I would take maybe an hour or two to really kind of like discuss this and break this down. But once we have this, then we would develop the 3 to 5 steps in your routine that would help you get there, so that you can then intentionally put yourself into the zone of optimal functioning with intention, which is different than just hoping we get there, right? Which is how most people approach it. So like, I got there or I didn't get there. And it's like, but you can actually override that and you can get yourself there when you need to get there. And so this is where this informs. So what we did is we looked at the analysis to then try to inform the routine. This isn't the routine. This simply helps get the routine get to these points. And then if I was coaching Karl, I would then help develop a routine that he could use with physiological cues and psychological cues and emotional cues to then just help him just flip the switch and just get there using his requirements and understanding his physiology, his emotions, and his cognitive processes.
I think this is a little bit different for me because those are all things that I have done over and over and over again, but I've never really thought about each piece of those and verbalized it until just now about all those things. I'm constantly thinking all of them, and some of them, I think over the years, some people have taught, they always said, hey, how do you, if you start having that death grip on the yoke, that's what I say about my feet, start wiggling your toes. It's hard to keep your hands, like I said, small little things like that to help me get back to where I'm not adversely impacting the task at hand. But I've never really thought about telling somebody, hey, I break it down and here's all the 3 different key components of each of those.
Right.
So this is kind of a little bit different for me, even though, and to think about it, I didn't even think about why is an 8.
Well,
I've never really thought about that before.
Yeah. How was that to even just go through that, just from your experience?
It is, because it also, it is, and it helps you sit there and go, okay, it gives you a little bit, like, I've always been someone that try to analyze what I did, and after the fact, I look and go, why did I do what I did? Especially if it during the sim, it's always go, why did I do what I did? Especially if there was an adverse impact, I did something wrong, or I need to do it better.
Right.
So I can go, okay. Often it's not the fact of what I did wrong; it's what led up to doing it wrong.
Yes.
Because almost always, there's something you could have broken the chain of events on. And so I've always felt like I need to analyze things and go, because if I can stop that from happening, the odds are I won't have that a bad end result that occurred during that particular event in the sim. Yeah. So to look at this way, because if you start looking at going, something's missing. Because I gotta believe there's times you've done approaches and there's something kind of nagging you in the back of your head and you're just not quite sure. Just something's off.
Yep.
But without thinking it, like you say, through all these different individual components, it's kind of hard to sit there. What is it that's missing? I know something's missing. What is it? If you've never really described it. Here, I think if you start describing those things, it's kind of, okay, what's that missing piece?
Yes.
And you go, okay, that's the missing piece. Now, why is it missing?
Yep.
So in that regard, I think if you don't do that, it's harder to get to that point.
Well, it's kind of you get there by luck or just by experience, but this is a way, if you think about it, this is a way to get a much quicker path to being able to make decisions correctly. If you're using some of these metrics, you understand them. You don't have to sort of just arrive there by chance or just from experience. You don't need to go get 20,000 hours of flying to understand how to put yourself into the zone of hand flying approaches in weather, at night or whatever it is. So it's really powerful, but most people don't do this stuff unless there's a need.
Well,
let
me flip the switch here now on it. We were talking about ourselves.
Yep.
Now you and I are a crew. We're flying an approach. It's your approach.
Okay.
You're in the zone.
Yep.
What can I do to complement you, or when I feel like you're zoning out?
Right.
What are some tools to help with that?
But here's how we would do that. I don't know if I can answer that. Here's how I would answer this. Let's look at the task. So that was the task requirements for pilot flying. Let's now break it down. What are the task requirements for pilot monitoring? That's right. The pilot not flying, pilot monitoring, PM. What is those task requirements? They're different. They're very different, right?
Huge.
And physiologically, what does it feel like? What does the emotions content feel like? What does the cognitive, the thinking feel like? What are you looking for? And so that's really optimal functioning, is when you know how to get in the zone of the monitoring role.
So you heard me on the PF. Now how about the PNF? I'll throw that at you, and
so for
and
me,
hit those same things.
Okay, so task requirement would be comms, because you're PNF. So your comms, you are backing up the pilot flying with the technical knowledge, understanding the procedure, when to go missed, what are the minimums, making sure those are set correctly, making sure that the instrumentation, that there aren't, flags that are getting missed. So
call outs,
call outs, making sure that the call outs are there. Absolutely. So to me, it would be communication requirements, because that's you're communicating with approach. It would be technical knowledge of the approach. And I think it would be making sure that the call outs are correct and accurate. So that's the let's just say that's the task requirements. And again, I'm doing this really fast. If we were really doing this, we would spend quite a bit of time listing out all the tasks. And then what you'll find is probably you could lump them into several categories. But this is just for an example, right? So don't hold me to this. I'm going to get some emails like, oh, you missed this and you missed that. Say,
yeah, okay, oh my God, I never want to fly with you.
Right, exactly. It's like,
don't worry, you won't.
Don't worry, you won't. Okay, yeah. So exactly. So there's a task. There's the task requirements. I was like, watch, I'll be back at the airlines in a year.
Yeah,
like,
no
oh,
kidding.
Shit.
Oh my God, I did have to fly with that guy.
Exactly. Okay, then my physiological requirements are like physiologically, my body is much more relaxed because my hands aren't on the yoke or on the throttle, or on the rudder pedals. So I'm keeping myself very relaxed, but ready, especially depending on the seat you're in and the experience level of the person you're flying with. I'm ready to take the controls if I need to. Okay, that's so.
Ready to intervene.
Ready to intervene. Yeah. So it's relaxed, it's light, and it's quick. That's what I'm thinking as the pilot monitoring. Emotional level, I am focusing on being engaged because, hey, he's got it. What the hell? Especially if you're looking for lights and stuff, like you want to be very engaged and alert. I want to be supportive. And I want to be prepared. Same for you. It's interesting. It's a lot of mirroring. I'm not looking at yours until I say mine, and then I look down at yours. So what I said engaged,
supportive,
and prepared. And then my thought process is big picture. Because I've got the advantage of not really fixating. So I'm looking at watching everything. I'm also looking outside to look
your eyes out
for lights. I'm eyes out. But I'm also monitoring that, we're hitting those altitudes and that we're not going deflected or anything like that. But I'm eyes out. So I'm kind of getting big picture. So don't fixate, get big picture, be prepared to go missed.
Plan.
It was just no plan continuation bias on this. I am like, okay, you're going to hit toga, bring up the flight director, bring the power up, pitch into the flight director, missed approach, positive rate, gear up, speed, heading, whatever, just like, what are my call outs? So I'm really rehearsed of what my call outs are going to be and what is the actual procedure, especially if we're flying by hand.
Yeah.
That's a tricky thing. I mean, you need to know, like your depth chart, what is the,
and turn and the altitude.
And sometimes too, like you're going in Chicago, this happened many times. Like, he's going to take you off of the published, and he's going to tell you turn left 270, climb 5,000, you kind of know the guys ahead of you, what's happening. So you can anticipate that now, but you're prepared. Hey, he may just keep you on the published. So you don't want to get down that rabbit hole, but hey, he's sending everybody else to 270 up to 5. That's probably going to be what we're going to get. So you're kind of just staying ahead of where you need to be. So staying ahead.
Would you lump that under
picture.
No plan continuation bias, or is that separate?
I would say staying ahead. It falls into that. So just call it staying ahead.
Okay.
So that was my task requirements: physiological, emotional, and thought, cognitive requirements.
So yours are
Yeah.
task requirements: calm, tech knowledge, call outs, physio, more relaxed, ready to intervene, and quick.
Yeah.
Emotional, engaged, supportive, prepared, and thought is big picture, no plan, continuation bias, and staying ahead.
That's right.
So now I'm going to ask you 0 to 10. Where are you at? What is that?
I'm at a 5.
Okay.
Yeah.
And why 5?
Because I don't want to be asleep, right? But I need some level of relaxation to be able to absorb the big picture, to not fixate. When I get real intense, I know my own physiology and my own cognitive stuff. When I'm like at a 9, like when I'm like fired up, man, I'm juiced and just like raw. I tend to fixate hard on like I'm gonna run through that pile. Like that's like the running back in me. Like I'm just gonna plow into those people, and so I don't need to be there when I'm monitoring. No. I need to be chilled back. I need to be stepped back and supportive. And so a 5, if I'm at a 3, I'm kind of like checked out. Like I'm like just not engaged. That's not proper support. That's like maybe he'll catch this if it goes far enough bad. But a 5 or a 6, I'm like, I'm engaged, but I'm not getting in the way of Karl trying to do his of Karl's zone, right? So I'm here to back you up, and that's where I need to be.
And I'd be between a 6, probably closer to a 7. Is where I think I would because I would have almost all of the same things.
Yeah,
if not exactly the same. Would you be, if you were the pilot flying? Would you be at an 8, or would you be somewhere else?
I'd be at an 8.
Okay.
Yeah, 8 or a 9, depending. I mean, if it's, I did Aspen for a long time, and you're at a 9 or a 10 because
Jackson Hole.
I mean, these are very dangerous airports, and it's moderate every time.
Even in nice weather sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, there's the mist is an extraction procedure, and it's like, it's
a night approach into LaGuardia is another one.
It's high. Yeah, there's a lot of it's high threat.
It can be challenging.
It's high threat, and so like you really need to be on your game, for that. But you don't want to be at a 10 because then you're twitching so fast that you're fixating.
And I think you're also maxed out. You have no.
Your adrenaline is just. And then you're dead. You got to do that 3 or 4 times in a day.
Oh yeah! Oh my God! Go missed approach after that, and it's just.
And we would, Aspen. They'd be like, go try it again because we're fee for departure. We want to get them in, and so it's like, okay, we would never try it once and bail. We tried a couple times, and so and you got to do that in a small condensed period of time. You need to have some ability to like. Have enough energy to be able to do this and not max yourself out. So
I would throw one last comment in all of this. And I think it's something that we all need to work on. And that is, and sometimes you're in a better place than others to do it. And that is, you need to be honest with yourself.
Yep.
Because there are certain times things are escalating or going out of your ability to handle. And you need to be able to make the decision, you know what? I can't do that. Or we shouldn't do that, because it's not about your ego. It's about accomplishing whatever the task is at hand. And not saying, oh, I'm going to make it work no matter what. Sometimes that puts you in a lot worse place than going, you know what? It's better to take the more conservative approach. I just want to throw that out there.
That's why knowing your signs and your symptoms are a really key awareness of like, and one is that I think that the advantage is you can get yourself into the zone quicker when you can pair up a routine to get in there. But sometimes you're like, you know what? I don't have it in me. I'm just not, I'm
at
tired
14-hour
and I'm
flight
not there.
And especially the long haul overseas. And then you all of a sudden get into really bad weather that wasn't expected.
Yes.
Yeah. So I will say that this was a very different podcast today. Not quite something different than we've ever done. It's really interesting to kind of bounce off and see where we would go with things.
Yep.
if you had to look back on today, what would be the takeaway for today?
Ooh, you stumped me on that one. I think it's know thyself.
That's what I would have said. Is
yeah,
you gotta know who you are, and
just saying I know myself, bull. You've got to really, you got to be able to break it down. Like this is an example of breaking it down to really know thyself. There's a lot that goes into it.
I agree, and I guess how I would say when you just said that is look at when things went well versus when they didn't, and what was the difference, and that's will help you know yourself a little bit.
Yes.
Because that will help a lot. We appreciate you listening to this. Please let us know if this kind of role playing is something that you liked, because there are so many other things that Matt has talked about over the last almost year's worth of podcasts, where we probably could have done something very similar to this. This is actually quite different, something a little bit.
And it was it was unplanned.
It was, and it's a little bit out of my comfort zone, just because it's not something I really have ever really, would think about talking about. But it helps you learn yourself, and maybe you might learn something about yourself when you hear other people that are talking about it, going, "Yeah, that's me," or I wouldn't do it quite like that. So, please let us know if you like this kind of role playing format, and we might be able to do some others in the future. As always. Please give us a thumbs up, a like, a review. Please tell people about us. We've gotten a lot of input and a lot of downloads. We just want to keep it growing because we want to reach more people. We thank you as always. We appreciate you, and we can't wait to see you listening in on our next podcast. Have a great day.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of the LiftAffect podcast. If you want to dive deeper into this episode and every episode, go to our website, liftaffect.com/podcast. If you're enjoying the show, we would love it if you'd follow us on Spotify and rate, review, and subscribe on Apple Podcasts. We really appreciate your support. You can find me on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn, all with the ID Matthew McNeil. This show is brought to you by LiftAffect, a clinical mental health and consulting company that assists air carriers, corporate flight departments, pilot unions, and commercial pilots by providing comprehensive psychotherapy and mental skills coaching services to pilots with mental health and mental performance-related issues. Visit liftaffect.com, that's LiftAffect.com, to book your free consultation. And finally, this podcast is for general informational purposes only. It does not constitute the practice of counseling, psychotherapy, medicine, or any other healthcare service, including the giving of medical advice. No therapeutic or provider-patient relationship is formed. The use of this information and any materials linked to this podcast is at the user's own risk. The content of this podcast is not intended to be a substitute for professional psychological advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Users should not disregard or delay in obtaining advice for any psychological or medical condition they have, and they should seek the assistance of their healthcare professionals for any such conditions. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next time on the LiftAffect podcast.